A very good morning to you. Today is Ascension Day, and the Ascension of the Lord is recorded at the end of the Gospels, and particularly at the beginning of the Acts, which I think is quite incorrectly called the Acts of the Apostles. It should be called the Acts of the Holy Spirit, because this new character is introduced into the story about Jesus, the promised comforter, the Holy Spirit. But the Ascension, it's always been one that I've focused on, really, almost as much as, well, not really as much, no. What can compare to the resurrection? But the church in which I came to faith and where I learned about Jesus and where I used to go for Sunday worship as a child and in the early years of my first marriage was St Luke's at Wimbledon Park in South London. And the stained glass window above the altar depicted this event, the Ascension of Jesus, going up in the clouds in glory. Let me read it here. It's in Acts chapter 1. So when they'd come together, they asked Jesus, "Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel?" And he said to them, "It's not for you to know times or seasons which the Father has fixed by his own authority. But you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth." And when he'd said this, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. And while they were gazing into heaven as he went, behold, two men stood by them in white robes and said, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into heaven? This Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven." There's so much here, and I hope you'll read this story again today as you have an opportunity and think about it. Jesus had been coming and going to his disciples for 40 days, showing that he was perfectly able to enter locked rooms and leave at will. Walls could not hold him. Locked doors could not keep him in or out. He came and went as he wished. So he could just have gone and not come back. He could have just, couldn't he? He could have just, after one of the visits, just disappear out of their sight, as he did with the men or the people on the road to Emmaus, the two disciples who were on the road to Emmaus. He just vanished. He just disappeared. He could have done that. But it was important for the disciples to know that the end of the earthly ministry of Jesus had come, to have a special moment when he went. We human beings do not deal very well with unended stories, with events that have no finality. When people leave without saying goodbye and disappear and nobody knows where they've gone or why they've gone or where they've gone or if they're safe or anything, it leaves a terrible thing. Even at the animals that we know and love, it's horrible when they disappear. We lost a cat once. He was missing for 11 days. I mean, this is going back to sometime in the 1990s. He was missing for 11 days. It was agony, those 11 days, not knowing what had happened to him. He was such a faithful cat. He was always there every morning. He came and went at will, from our house, but he was never missing. And when he was missing, we didn't know where he was or what had happened to him. People said things that are not very comforting. Cats, when they're reaching the end of their lives, they find a private place and just curl up, and we just wanted to know. And if he was in trouble, well, he came back after 11 days. He'd been hit by a car, and it had taken him 11 days to drag himself home. But he came home, and when he came home, what a relief it was to know where he was and to be able to help him. and without an end to the story. You know, so Jesus left in what was a really spectacular way. You know, he didn't just say, right guys, this is the last time I'm going to be coming, wait in Jerusalem, and I'll send the Holy Spirit from the Father to you, as I promised. I'll send him. Right, this is it, bye. But he didn't do that. He did this thing that takes faith to believe in the ascension, as much faith as it takes to believe in the resurrection. Because it says simply here, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. He literally rose. He literally ascended, like a lift, goes up a lift shaft, like a balloon lifts off the ground. I had some people that I worked with within a church setting years ago, and when we were talking about the second coming, and I said, well, Jesus will come back just the same way as he went. He'll come back on the clouds of heaven. He went on the clouds, he lifted up, and he went in. And they said, oh, it's just a myth, it's just a story. It didn't really happen like that. And when Jesus comes back again, he won't really come back on the clouds of heaven. It takes a lot of faith to believe that this is what happened. Jesus didn't have a jetpack tied to his back. He didn't have a propeller on his back that lifted, or on his head that lifted him up. We can't do what Jesus did. You can't do this in the natural. And Jesus didn't do this when he left any of the places after he'd visited during those 40 days. But this final time, this is what he did. He ascended. He was lifted up. Just like that. And the clouds gathered round him, and he went through the clouds. That's what he did. It's one of the most amazing miracles of all time. And Paul in Thessalonians says, when Jesus comes back and he comes in the clouds, we will go. The dead will rise first, and then we will all meet Jesus in the air. We're all going to do this. We're all going to do this when Jesus comes again, without the aid of a jetpack. Oh, I've run out of time. What an exciting topic. Think about it. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.